Excellent.
Lenny's in.
There's us. So Jana was driving out west.
She said she might be able to. Door.
Paul is coming in.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
I don't know, I don't know if Tanya's available or not, I haven't heard either way,
About.
whether she's coming or not.
Tanya?
Yeah.
You retired yet? Retired?
Officially.
Huh? I know you're officially retired,
Okay.
that doesn't mean.
Well, yeah, I'm still volunteering a little bit and getting paid a little bit, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on what I'm doing.
Okay.
So, yeah,
If you'd like, December sixth, Friday.
Yeah.
I put it out to the 7
Thank you.
Inviting to our DLA thing.
Okay.
It's gonna start at 4:30.
Paul, can you hear us?
legit, okay.
Okay, we hear you. Lenny,
That's the sixth.
Yeah, a week from.
Yes, I can hear everybody fine.
okay,
Shaw.
who was that?
Nothing. Hello?
Who?
It's Paul's
Somebody was called
phone.
Paul.
Standing, you okay?
I'm just gonna call the meeting to order. Our president, Chris Bradley,
No surgery?
myself, Pat Donahue, Kimberly Dallas.
All right.
And get Charlie Bader guest, Lenny Reich, and Paul are here too, members. So we have a quorum. And we can, first, order, old business is the consideration of the November 12th, 2024 minutes. Thank you, Paul, again for doing those.
Is that the 12th or the 11th?
Well,
Deadline's the 11th.
yes,
Oh, okay.
So that should be adjusted?
yes, to be adjusted, and the 12th was that Tuesday.
Minutes are dated wrong?
Any comments on the, minutes?
Yes, Paul, and you've got November 11th on the top, and we're thinking it's the 12th.
12th is a Tuesday and the 11th is a Monday.
So it should be the
I think
12th.
it's 12.
Well,
Got that? Okay. I'll make that correction. Doing this
And
too
then-
long. Doing this too.
Any other correction?
I didn't see anything.
Nope.
I didn't say anything.
Motion to
I
approve.
did- I did receive corrections and I made the corrections from Lenny
Yeah,
and
this is-
Dana.
Yes, this is the second go around. now.
Right, yeah. So, I move to accept them as corrected.
I second that.
So move. November 12th, 2024 minutes. All those approval?
Right.
Any opposed? No. Minutes are accepted.
Good, anything else?
I have one thing, this is kind of for December. Our Tuesday, our first, second Tuesday of the month meeting is December 10th.
Okay.
And the next meeting would be December 24th, which I don't think we want a Christmas Eve
Right.
meeting, so
I won't be here.
I was thinking we just have one meeting in December on the 10th. Or does the committee think we should squeeze another one in?
And it sounds good to me.
I think that's fine.
Paul
So,
and Lenny,
No, that's certainly fine. Sure.
okay,
so we're canceling December 24th, correct?
that's right.
I guess, are we having a holiday meeting? Or is it just a regular meeting?
December 10th,
Yeah,
Well, what's your definition of a holiday
Yeah.
meeting?
Bring some eggnog.
I don't know. I mean, we've never done it before. I just offer the idea that we should make it a little social. I don't know, bring some wine. I may be remote, so it doesn't make much difference to me. Maybe I'll come up, you know, if it's,
well,
I might be enticed.
real, let's keep the December meeting. Let's keep that and we'll decide that, we'll see how it turns out for any kind of festivities.
Okay,
That was my, comments on that, so Chris, do you have anything on?
Anything, just just to talk about the
Building,
proposal or the presentation that we made to the select, to the planning board. Some thoughts on that? Should we jump into that? What do you
I want
think?
to jump right into it.
Okay, so the response from Sarah's, email was that they would, work on change number one and that they would table all of the other ones to,
February, right?
into next year and talking to Sarah, she recommended that we get on the schedule for the February meeting. So we would need to talk to Hans about that, but I think that makes sense. I would like to propose that we go back to Sarah, and I've mentioned it to her in the call. I think, change number 12 is a slam dunk.
I think so too. It's closely related to one,
Yeah.
Yeah.
in regards to being related to permitting.
Yeah.
It's administrative, it, shouldn't require a lot. So,
what is
12 is,
change 12? I don't have it.
change 12 is all permits issued by the town for properties within the shoreline zone require town notification of abutting
All right.
landowners.
Right,
Notice will include a copy of the approved permit. And I just feel like that's a really important way for us to all, as a community, work together towards enforcement of the ordinance.
And it might save Hans some trouble, because if the notice gets sent out, he's not gonna get 1,000 calls
Right.
from everybody, hey, what's going on?
Somebody's doing something over here.
Somebody's doing something over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I'm on it.
Yeah.
But he's gonna take all those calls, whereas if they get a letter, they know what's going on.
Right, and
Let me say something from maybe Seven Lakes perspective or former Seven Lakes. Sometimes these PBRs are done. I wouldn't say last minute, but in a time sensitive way. And if there's a waiting period to do the notification, that could complicate getting jobs done in the
Oh.
field. So it may be after the fact, but better after the fact than not at all. So I'm not squabbling with the notification, but I wouldn't want notification to get in the way of getting work done.
No, I don't think, we're not proposing that there would be any condition of,
Timeliness.
feedback or anything like that.
Yeah.
It would just be, and I'm thinking mostly that, like, we built a barn and I just think, it was actually just outside the shoreline zone, but if you're building a shed or something like that, I think that notification, PBR, that would be part of this as well, yeah, but that's,
Well, that's one of the permits, and that's one of the times you were asking Hans to be involved and, paying attention to those, and which is good.
yeah, that's change number one, that's
Right.
Yeah,
And he says he's already doing that to some extent. Yeah,
but, yeah, okay.
So are you gonna go back to Sarah? and ask
I can go
They can
back to
roll that in.
Sarah, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Pat,
sure.
And I can respond and obviously copy it. I think most everybody was copied on her email, so.
It was very very thoughtful to send us that information.
I'd be happy to do that.
Chris, I don't understand. One thing is that when we went to the meeting, it seemed like they weren't in agreement with number one as we wrote it. The number one, as I remember, is that we required a property owner after receiving a PBR to apply for permits.
Yeah,
And
and evidently, according to Sarah, that at the end of the meeting, because they spent most of that meeting on the stiff lawsuit results.
Right.
That at the end of that meeting, they talked about the changes again and decided that they could work through change number one. Now,
That was after
Um,
we left, Paul.
What does that mean? In other words, do we have to meet again with them? Because it wasn't,
No, I don't think so. You know, Hans is, that was actually, I believe that was recommended initially by Hans, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yes.
You guys remember that?
It was, yes.
And they're
But I
saying
see-
maybe when. Sorry.
but it seemed to me, because I wrote it, that what I wrote is not what George Seal liked, because he didn't want. So I'm not sure what the planning board was interested in doing.
Paul, after we left the planning board meeting, they continued with the planning board meeting and it came back up for discussion, is my understanding. And the planning
Right,
board.
I understand that. Okay, but in other words, you're thinking the planning board is accepting our change one as is?
I'm thinking that they are they accept the concept, and that they will work on the language. Which I think that that's sort of what they would have to do with any change is work on the language. And when I asked George about that, he said, you know, we need to do that. That nobody else is gonna draft the language for them. Now, you drafted, we presented language for them. Hopefully they'll look at that. But, you know, I think maybe to your point, Paul, maybe what you're getting at is that, we pretty much lost control over this change. And so we're not working with them on it. As far as I can tell, we can ask to participate in the language that they construct for both changes 1 and 12.
Right,
And see if they might agree to having us participate, and we could, I'm not sure how that would manifest itself. I guess they would carve out some time at one of the meetings to talk about changes 1 and 12, and if we could know what that is, but maybe just looking at their agenda, we could participate, but I can ask that. I mean,
I just asked,
Yeah,
it's
just
easy,
probably just ask.
what's that?
I just asked.
Yeah, just ask.
And this is something we could work through January, February, and have ready for the town meeting in March.
That's what they were.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what Sarah said,
Yeah.
have it be part of the March voting.
Yeah, they had this lawsuit. Are you familiar with that lawsuit?
Not in details.
No, I mean, it's pretty confusing,
Right.
actually,
Yeah.
reading
Yeah.
the opinion and everything. It was, you know, I couldn't quite follow it, but.
I haven't been following it, I just know that
It's-
that's going on.
Yeah, it's
And smells
confusing.
like it sounds,
Huh?
spelled like it sounds. Stiff.
Yes,
Stiff,
Yeah.
yes,
You gotta look
Maine
it up,
Supreme
yeah.
Court.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
so-
Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Decision that came back on the town, so.
Yeah, so the concept, Charlie, is for them to work through the language, a language change in response to that stiff
Yeah.
situation, and then do change 1, and we would ask them to do change 12. And then just package that all together for the select board and
Mhm.
you know, and the town attorney and the March
Yeah.
meeting, so.
what I'm saying is that I think we should ask that we be present at the next time they discuss it and let us know, number one. Number two, my impression, and I want to know what other people thought is, I said that one thing, my interpretation of what we proposed in change 1, and George Seal says, well, I like Hans's interpretation and not yours. And so that left me a little bewildered.
On change 1,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
I think that was, Paul, I just entered the room. And, the difference in our interpretations was yours was almost requiring a permit. Whereas my interpretation is that there was a review to see if a permit was required.
Well, that's what it says. They apply and you issue a permit if applicable,
If applicable, yeah.
if applicable. So, okay, as long as we're on the same page.
So,
Okay,
determine if a permit is required to be issued by either the CEO or the planning board, but as long, yeah, as long as we're on the same page, that's great. Okay. Any other further questions on 1 or 12? So moving along, I'm thinking that the other 10 changes, that, talking with Sarah, she was saying, well, we'll work on, and that's something, she was suggesting that we ask you for us to get on the agenda for February, to start the ball rolling on the other changes, so. Can we be on the agenda for February, so.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And what is that? What is the date of that meeting? Do we know?
First and third.
Thursday.
This will be the
First Thursday,
planning board's meeting.
Right,
first Thursday, yeah.
so that's the 6th.
The 6th, is it? Yeah, it is.
6th of December, we're talking about?
February.
February.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So I'm thinking that these other changes are something that we should get some help on from a municipal attorney, an attorney that specializes in municipal work. And to do that, I can talk to people I know and the Lakes, Maine Lakes Association as well, find out if they have, ideally it would be a municipal attorney who lives on a lake in Maine and wants to do this for cheap. That would be the ideal thing, and have them look at these and say, okay, here, we're working on 1 and 12, hopefully. And here are the other 10 changes, and this is what we'd like to do. What do you think? Can you craft language that would be, that would fly, that would be legal, that would be enforceable, that sort of stuff, and see what kind of response we get. What does everybody think about that?
I think it's a great idea. Do you have somebody in mind to reach out to?
Well, I'm gonna start beating the bushes as to,
I guess who would pay for
Isn't
that?
that what our town attorney is supposed to do? Or do you not think that would be a good choice?
well, I'm kind of thinking that the town attorney is sort of in the workflow of going through this whole process and I mean, Maddie and I would be willing to underwrite the cost of an attorney as long as it's not, ridiculous. But this would be basically to look at all these questions and see what can we do that is permitted by the Constitution of the state. I mean, I think that's what we're running into on a lot of the septic stuff, is that we can't, the opinion is we can't mandate it. So how would we do that? And what would the language look like? Take a look at our, because I sort of see this as being a model ordinance that other lakes should adopt, other towns should adopt.
Probably so.
I mean, I think it's bigger than us. So,
It's a statewide issue, as
Yeah.
we've seen in the paper
Yeah.
over the last year or so. And just an update on the septic, I've talked with 7LA.
Yep.
And it'll probably be next summer that we would be able to talk with Whitney King, when we have an intern. So Chris Mons and I are meeting next week to really get the ball rolling on that, to set it up. BLA obviously fund the intern, but have them start doing research on the septics.
on septic sort
To
of.
identify those 3 different buckets.
That's right.
Right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that we can work outside the ordinance to, if we can identify some septics that are at risk, then we can start talking to the landowners.
and in the meantime, BLA and probably 7LA as well, we can continue putting the message in the other lake associations about septics and
Yeah.
alerting, it's gotta be an ongoing campaign, because you can have all the rules in the world, but people don't know about them.
Yeah.
But you might not even need rules if people know about them, they might just start doing some things, obviously not. if they
Do the
can't
right
afford
thing,
it.
and it would be nice to pair that with some sort of a program, for lack of a better word, to help with.
That's right.
The funding.
Especially if it came from like the state, like a state type issue.
So I don't know.
But we'll see, I mean, those are things we can work on, but I think the education part will also make it easier when you try and get any ordinance changes passed. Because, oh yeah, I know why they don't wanna do that, instead of, they just wanna stick it to
You
me.
just wanna stick it to me, yeah, right. So,
Kind of like what Andrew wrote to us, that some of the language you had needs a, kind of bullet pointed, step by step, but.
Are you thinking
I think-
BLA would, sorry?
Go ahead.
Would pay for that?
For doing the-
Interns
Or
or,
do the intern, oh yeah,
yeah, we've already said the Lakes would organize it,
yeah, we would pay a fee to Seven Lakes for
Yeah.
posting,
just like you do.
just like we do with everything else,
Yeah.
they built in an administration
Yeah.
cost.
Good.
It's just, thanks, we've already committed pretty much to that, we have to do a board vote, but we've been talking about it for 6 months, so.
Yeah.
At the board level, so. We would do that, and so that we know what we're working,
Mm-hmm,
because right now, we don't.
I agree.
But if we took all the towns around the lakes, Belgrade, we'd be for Belgrade, but also we do for Rome
If you can
too.
do them all, that'd be awesome,
And
in
do
one
it.
summer and get a good baseline.
All of them that are on our,
Yeah.
BLA, which cover Rome, Belgrade, Mount
Mhm.
Vernon,
Mhm.
and get an intern, might not take that long, maybe it does, but we got all that database.
Yep.
Then you come in and say, okay, we've got to set up rules because of blah, 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 but right now you don't know.
Right.
And if you don't know, you just blowing
Hey,
in the wind.
Bert, if you don't mind, my bringing in some Seven Lakes and Lake Association business into this meeting. I
Yeah.
think that it would be a really good idea in doing this to involve the other lake associations,
Yes.
because I mean, you're interested in,
That's what we talked about in our lake trust meeting last week, Len.
yeah, well, we didn't really talk about it this way.
Not that, doing stuff
Yeah, I
together.
mean, rather than having interns working on just those towns, there are other towns involved also with the other lakes.
Yeah,
So I think it'd be a good idea for all of the lakes to be involved.
yeah,
And all the lakes can help fund the interns,
yeah,
than just
Probably.
having BLA involved.
For some of it,
yeah, we probably can get a grant.
like Maine or Heritage Fund, something like that.
Yeah, it's somebody like,
Like 20 grand
like
grant.
you could write the grant. So,
Well, he's enjoying his retirement.
he is, we're gonna put him right to work, I don't wanna get bored.
Lose those skills.
Yeah, don't wanna lose it, gotta keep those skills sharp. But yeah,
Chris-
with the funds, this, big.
Chris, I think. Just to follow up on this, as Bert knows, have been involved with the septic for, I don't know, for a long time. And so I think we need to look at this delay caused by the planning board not being receptive at this time due to the logistics as an opportunity, which you are now talking about, because it looks likely that we may not have an opportunity to go back until March of 2026.
Right.
So I started to do some legal research on whether there are any municipalities in Maine that require a septic permit like every 3 years. And Chat AI gave me 5 towns: Portland, Scarborough, Falmouth, Wyndham. And when I went to the regulations, I could not find them in the regulations. So I'm not sure
Right.
it's accurate. And I,
Yeah.
but I met with Hans, and Hans says I have to look more into the zoning. So if we could present this, and we might even need to go to the state and ask the state to start to make some regulations, because it can come from a different police power rather than a zoning provision. This should really be a public health provision, because you're really measuring the risk of the health of the people versus, the grandfather issue, I mean, and there are many issues here, one of which is getting the data, getting to show what the risk of not doing this is. We really have to work that up. And then the risk is what's going to drive whatever regulation is required. And just as an aside, and Hans and I talked yesterday about this, and his suggestion, I said, what do you think is the lowest hanging fruit of all the provisions and changes we're speaking about with regard to septic? And it was Hans' idea that the short-term rentals and to move forward with that would bear more fruit, given some of the inclinations of the planning board members.
I do know that there is a subcommittee regarding short-term rentals that I think is finally kicked off. Is that actually started? No? It's been about to kick off for a year.
And Hans, there's nothing in the ordinance that says that short-term rentals require some kind of a septic evaluation.
We have no short-term rental ordinance, period.
So there's no requirement for notification
And
or
that's
anything.
the committee that was being referenced is,
Making
they're trying to get it together and. I guess somebody recently dropped off of it and they hadn't gotten any legs yet. So maybe little involvement, you know, with your septic of the advertised properties, that's a great place to put it. And once, you know, if it's adopted there. And other rules. It can be. Laterally moved into other. Ordinances,
Gives a toehold in there. put it on.
yeah. And.
Because it's been done in other jurisdictions. I know, I've talked to Pete Callen who did it in Pennsylvania before he came up here. He worked in his town to have a provision that you have to have septic certification inspections on certain every 3 years. And I think that he had a sanction that if you didn't do the inspection, you couldn't pay your real estate taxes. So there is legal authority. And imagine if we do some legal work, or I'm all for hiring someone who would work on a close to pro bono basis, Chris.
If the state allows that, I mean, last week I found in Smithfield. A wooden. Septic tank, a box. That was,
Right.
it was kind of a joke, but then yesterday. I found one or possibly two in Rome. Less than 50 feet from the lake. Where I thought I was in Belgrade, but I crossed the line. When I came back to find the lot, I was like, oh, darn. It was in Rome. But I contacted Ed Avery and next week we're gonna go together and have a look. And he's gonna see if he can find, if there's any record on that lot.
Who is that person?
Ed Avery in Rome.
Oh, is he the
Code
one?
enforcement.
Okay,
The new guy replaced Andy Marble.
yeah, I
Yeah.
just wasn't sure his name.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
I mean, there's
Close to the
reason,
lake,
there's
just-
reason to do this.
Yeah,
The cesspool.
Worse than that, I'm sure.
yeah.
Yeah, cause I found the plywood lid and it hadn't been moved in a long time.
Because I think there's receptivity at the planning board, and I believe also at the select board.
There's also similar to having not very good phosphorus data on what's happening with the septic. There's very little E. coli data. And there, I think to your public health, someone raised public health, I think it was Paul. If we had more E. coli data, we might raise that issue too.
So we really have to have a task force that works with the lake associations and maybe our committee. Because we can use this next year to our benefit.
Yeah, they did say the select persons about maybe bringing it to votes in June as well. So you've got other voting opportunities possibly before the next town meeting in 2026.
Especially if it's out in the press, stuff's going on, there's a problem,
Especially a focused one like this.
especially when it's E. coli.
Yeah.
That will get people's attention.
Yeah,
Boy, and that in the news this
Yeah.
past week. I mean, that's weird that there's E. coli, all over the country.
Yeah.
People
Oh,
get
yeah.
sick and dying from it, just like,
It's in us, it's just down this end of the business end.
Yeah.
So.
so.
And these days you can test it, separate it from, human versus, animal.
Right.
The
Oh, they
genetic
can-
testing
they can
is
do
pretty
it.
easy these days, but it costs money.
Right.
And you have to organize the study.
They have to sample this.
Yeah,
But I think we can assume that if somebody's got a cesspit that's 50 yards, 50 feet from the lake, that's,
Pretty good idea.
after a 2-inch storm.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I mean,
Or even after they just do
Just think
laundry.
about it. Yeah.
Even if it, especially if it's made of wood.
Right.
And there was-
We laugh about that out behind the back bedrooms at my family camp, and, we're talking about 50 years ago, there was a hole in the ground, which probably my dad said, step gingerly there, don't walk on that, and, we ended up building a big above ground, septic field and pumped everything up to there, but, I'll never forget that, I keep waiting to fall into it.
Let us know. Hans will be right over to check it out.
This site is astounding because it's all boulders.
Yeah.
And you can see the pipes come out and there's no way they can get past those boulders.
They're not filtering much.
No,
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Another
We
thought
haven't-
is,
We have an
ahead,
impediment
Bob.
for a reason, because it's toxic. We can't drink the water out of these lakes.
Yeah, people did what I
swimming
did.
too.
I was a kid, we did too.
Yeah.
We did.
I still drink the water.
Kimberly,
Explains
you
a
have
lot.
something on you?
I
Yes,
guess, I guess the
Well,
question is, why can't we drink the water? What is the toxicity? I mean, is this part of our water quality management? Do we know why we can't drink the water from a chemical point of view?
Well, there's probably a million reasons why you don't wanna do that. It's,
Mercury's,
Yeah, I mean, there's all
Mercury,
sorts of, you look at the
chemical
cormorants and
diseases.
the ospreys and,
Rainy, amoebas,
yeah. No, it's,
flesh-eating amoebas, whatever.
so, Kimberly, what were you gonna say?
Another place that we might want to refocus, is that we received the email from Lynn Geiger on the
Right,
18th.
right.
And she had, and I think maybe Charlie worked on this too, had comments to our presentation that we had already given it to the planning board before.
Yeah,
we
let's-
received
Stuart,
that.
Stuart also worked on that with her.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe
Stuart-
that was
Stuart
it. So that
Paul.
might be another place for us to kind of regroup and maybe start there, going through that versus what we did present to the planning board. Maybe there's some changes we could easily incorporate.
But we'll keep.
Yeah, so do we wanna
I'll
work?
let you guys know when I know about the intern.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bert.
Thanks, Bert.
Just keep pushing.
Thank you,
You got it.
Bert. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Lenny.
Bert.
We'll see you.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, everybody have a good Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, you suppose there's gonna be any paella or something at your house?
No, we're doing turkey, the old stuff.
Really?
But Sarah does wanna do a paella party. I bought sorry, I'm gonna go off track for 5 seconds. So I bought, I don't know, I think we got 18 like mini paella plates. So she's gonna do a paella party. And probably all get an invitation and show people how to make it and then they take it home with them.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Very nice.
so.
Cool.
You wanna come?
I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do the holidays. So, yeah, I've made notes on mine, based on, her
Happy Thanksgiving.
comments.
You too.
And, she said,
Good work.
change one was redundant, but I don't think it is. So, I mean, there was some of, I disagreed with some of her comments, so, but, she said, change number 2, to change the language to use of all fertilizers containing phosphorus in any form within the shoreline zone is prohibited, which I think that's fine, because she thought it might be confusing if you said the use of all phosphorus fertilizers, so. So that was good.
What about liquid form?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that would still be valid. Fertilizers containing nitrogen and potassium are allowed only in liquid form. I think that seemed like, I think George Steele felt that was a good move.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then I feel like there needs to be a quantity aspect to it, because you get somebody pouring water into their tomato plants that are in pots, is that illegal? you know, if you say all use of phosphorus.
Right, right. So if there was phosphorus in Miracle Grow on your porch.
Porch, that was a good example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I believe George used the example that, counterexample to us, that there were certain plants or trees that you were trying to get started, that you really did need to have phosphorus fertilizer to use to get them going.
But he said that was for root development.
Yeah,
There's different forms.
I mean, I'm not sure, I honestly am not sure that's true, but that's what he said.
Yeah, I felt like Dave Roque disagreed with that. I think was it Dave that had told us that he thought that nitrogen and potassium were fine, but
You can also do it with nice rich organic mulch, not mulch, compost and other things that, you know, that long before there were commercial synthetic fertilizers, people did what we're talking about doing, and, you know, transplanting trees and bushes. The synthetic fertilizers of the kind we're trying to ban only date back to the period after the First World War into the 1920s. And before that, they just did not exist. So,
The only other thought I have about that too is, you know, people use, you know, like compost or manure.
Yeah.
And I mean, there may be ways to plant that are safer than others. If you spread it on top, it's gonna run into the lake a lot more easily. If you plant it 18 inches in the ground where the roots are, it may be
Mix it in.
perfectly okay. Especially
Yeah.
if you're 30 feet
Yeah.
back from the lake. So
Yeah.
it gets nuanced, I think, depending on how you do the job. And
absolutely.
is that something you want to, you know, look at, you know, individual planning, you know, projects, and does that require a permit? And
so how do we proceed with something like this?
Well, you could use the word surface. We could say you can't use it on the surface, I suppose.
Perfect applied.
Yeah,
I think it needs more work. And maybe talking to Dave Roque again and others, and maybe landscaping companies that do it professionally, if any of them are kind of certified for Lake Smart.
yeah. If you're getting a root ball in there, you're gonna have to dig it pretty deep and wide.
Yep,
And you're gonna put that.
and you're gonna put
material-
some kind of fertilizer in there, whether it's organic
Get
or
started.
artificial.
Maybe.
Matt at Native Notions would be great to speak with.
Yeah.
I know he's like Spark certified or whatever the right term is.
What's that?
Matt,
Speaking of Maine Lakes, that could be another certification program is, you know, doing plantings around the lake and doing it in a way that's responsible and.
Yep.
Okay, so we need more research on change number 2.
Yeah.
The
But I do think, you know, that sort of the casual surface application of granules, to your point, is probably a bad idea and
Oh, yeah.
unequivocally and.
okay. Keep moving.
Yeah.
Change 3. Her comments, was that sort of the thought that short circuit was not a defined term. And she suggested that the last sentence in the legal language in number 3 would be changed to: the inspection report shall estimate the system's current nutrient reduction efficiency and shall state the potential for wastewater to reach the groundwater table relatively untreated. I put in relatively untreated, since that was what Dave wrote, mentioned. Seem okay to everybody, or?
I like that.
That kind of ties in what we're trying to find, that, you know, this groundwater is gonna, you know, can
Yeah, I mean, I
be
think it just,
contaminated.
it defines.
Yeah.
The short circuit concept.
I think that's a good one.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, Chris, you're using the word relatively untreated?
Yeah, that's what Dave Roque had suggested, that I originally had untreated in there, and he said relatively untreated, so the concept being that, the septic, leach field would be doing some, you know.
I understand, but I'm not sure that kind of wording would fly in an ordinance. It's just, it's off. I'm not saying that it's wrong. It may make a lot of sense, but it's just way open to interpretation.
Well, you're talking about an inspection report, and a inspector. And ordinance says, you know, what's the potential for what sort of reach the groundwater table relatively untreated? So it would be subject to the interpretation of the inspector. What do you suggest we do, Lenny?
I don't know. I guess I would leave out the word relatively. I understand what Dave Roque is saying, but I think that if you put the word relatively in there, you're just opening up too many possibilities for interpretation. I would just leave it untreated.
Using without optimum treatment.
Without optimum
Well, but
treatment?
you're talking about short circuiting?
Yes.
Yes,
The issue is, you have to define what a short circuit is, and what a short circuit is an inadequate biomat,
well,
a lack of a biomat's presence.
yeah, but we're saying that that's a component of the short circuit. We're saying that the effect of the short circuit is for the wastewater to reach the groundwater table untreated, relatively untreated, without optimum treatment, something like.
Without complete treatment, and it's incomplete, it hasn't been treated. It may be partially treated, but when you go and we've talked about this, when you go and you determine whether or not you have a short circuit condition, you have to examine the biomat, and it's the structure of and the consistency of the biomat, which affects how the water the leaching effluent is treated. I mean,
I understand that,
but the breach, the legal enforcement is not, you're not testing the effluent, you're testing the biomat. The biomat in its condition is what is a short circuit.
I understand that, but we're just saying, if you don't have a biomat, or if you don't even have a leach field, you've got a plywood, hole in the ground, the danger is, and what you're trying to, the inspector has to state the potential for wastewater to reach the groundwater table relatively untreated or something like that. So starting to talk about the biomat and, is there a case where there's a biomat, but it's
So you could say
still.
without being completely treated would be one way to say it. Which is what.
So any condition that causes
Mhm.
Or treatment.
any condition that causes the incomplete treatment of effluent is illegal. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
It's what are you looking at? It's sort of, you're looking at the cause of the effect is the issue. What are you regulating, the cause or the effect?
so Paul, I would ask you to go look at Lynn Geiger's comments and, if you'd like to modify them and Lenny as well, why don't you just shoot me what you think? it
Okay.
should-
I'm sorry. Okay,
Did Lynn suggest some language?
She suggested this language, and whether it was she or Stuart Cole or whatever, but, and she had to reach the groundwater table untreated, I think, and I had put in relatively
Got it.
because of Dave Roque's comments, and I don't know. But, okay, so.
I think it should be incompletely treated as opposed to untreated. That seems to catch it It's because it needs to be completely treated in order to be acceptable.
Or reduced to a certain level,
Oh,
parts per
Yeah.
billion of
Yeah.
phosphorus, I think
Whatever.
that's something measurable.
well, that would be considered treated if it gets to whatever that level is. So if it's
Right.
incompletely treated, it has not reached the level.
But I'm wondering if you need to define it that specifically or not, you know, at the end of the day. But. Well, I think this is good interim language.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, well, in any case, the planning board is gonna, slice it and dice it. So they're like,
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. So, you guys, maybe you wanna take a look at it and see if you can decide on incompletely treated or optimally untreated or reasonably, relatively. Anyway, so, I think her next comment really was on change 11, where the pits and mounds, she said natural topography, so changing in the ordinance language, the second sentence on properties where the existing vegetation and ground cover has been removed and or the natural topography has been smooth rather than and or the pits and mounds have been smooth, but natural topography is what she thought we should put in there. A layer of erosion control must be put down. She registered a complaint because she has some people saying that they want to mulch their whole waterfront, which she thinks is not a good idea in some cases. But I don't know.
some people mulch to the point of reducing vegetation,
Yeah, no,
and that's not
that's not,
great.
that's
Not
not
what we
the
want.
point here. So,
You know, as an interim thing, just, you know, to go from essentially clear cut to, you know, vegetation, it might hold the soil.
right, right.
But, you know, you should let the plants come up and then leave them alone until they're 3 feet high and then you can trim them.
Yeah, so I would say we leave, we could change it to the natural topography wording rather than pits and mounds, but then leave this for the planning board and hash it out, you know.
I would agree.
Does that seem okay?
I had a situation. I spoke with Stuart today about it, because, it's a construction project. There's been a couple that have been within less than 5 feet from the lake. And they're all mostly like the shorefront is rocky, the ice has pushed it up, you got the berm. And they've got a planting schedule, they wanna put 2 and 3 gallon plants. Hydrangeas. In that berm,
Yeah,
you can't dig a 3 gallon hole in that berm, and if you do. And then try to water it, you're weakening the berm, you're making a spot for water to go, so. Stuart agreed with me that it's a bad idea and I'm. Shooting it down.
Did you suggest an alternative?
yeah, what's
He
the
suggested the blueberry mulch, but.
Yeah.
You know, what's naturally there is sprigs of trees that wanna come up usually. Nobody wants a tree right,
You're allowed to trim to 3 feet high.
excuse me.
You're allowed to trim that tree 3 feet high, and at
keep
least
it-
you've got a hedge, you know?
I thought the ordinance read that you're not allowed to cut anything under 3 feet tall.
That's right.
Right, once it gets to 3, you can cut it.
You can keep it at 3.
That's what the
If it-
current,
Or you
If
run
it's-
into the
Based on
canopy.
the, the
Don't
diameter.
you run into the canopy rule after that to keep you from, so if you. Cut down all your trees and had a white pine hedge or whatever. Then you would run into the canopy rule, I think. Wouldn't,
Well, I always thought if it's more than 3 feet, you're allowed to cut the bottom third,
right, you're allowed to do that too.
there's that.
taller than 3 feet.
That's if it's an already established tree.
So anything less than 3 feet can't be cut, and anything
Right.
greater than 3 feet can be chopped off, right?
What's that?
Anything greater than 3 feet can be cut,
Can, yeah, trim to that hedge height.
so I don't.
So any old vegetation, you can only trim the bottom part. But any new vegetation, you have to let grow up 3
So
feet.
there's a diameter involved, right? Isn't there?
No,
That's only if you're removing large trees from
Okay.
your, you know, that shoreline zone, yeah.
See, Charlie, I never interpreted that the way you are. I've always said it needs to be able to grow, anything less than 3 feet doesn't get cut. Once it's above, you know, you can selectively.
Just trim the
The
lower
bottom
third of it.
Is what's in the order.
Uh,
I'm just
Jan-
reading the way it's written, that, yeah, my interpretation of any rejuvenating area is, you could pretty well trim it at 3 feet forever. Because it doesn't say you can't do that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
Well, I don't know.
But it's not a bad thing.
It's a good thing
It's actually. a
compared to
really good thing
grass.
Yeah, you don't want grass.
Right.
And you don't, and people are not gonna want to have their view grow up and go away.
Right, exactly. And so this is, that permits a good view at sitting height. And, you know, that's a good standard. I think
But if-
people can,
If you had lightning strikes or if you had some sort of storm damaged trees and you had, it ended up basically clearing your, you know, waterfront, then you would have to plant some trees, because you'd be in violation of the canopy rule.
right. And I think that's okay. You know, I think if you're, you know, removing some trees, whether it's the 40% rule or because of, like that windstorm that went through Belgrade Lakes a few years ago and everybody lost their shoreline trees. You know, yes, they have to replant because nothing, that was not grandfathered, you know, the damage. You have to reestablish, you know, I think that's fine. But that's different than somebody that's not subject to any rules, who is letting things grow up. You know, I think in general, that is not a bad standard if you required everybody within that, you know, 20 feet of the shore where possible, to have to let it, you know, revegetate to 3 feet high as a minimum.
Cause I had people come in, they cut down 5 cedar trees. At 3 feet,
Right.
and you
And,
got a trunk,
and they're maintaining it that high. But these used to be bigger trees.
oh yeah,
Yeah, so they violated and they should have to replant trees.
they are replanting
Right.
trees. And. You know, it's. I don't like that trimming it down to 3 feet concept, you know, I don't wanna advertise that because someone can think they can go in there and cut them all down at 3 feet. Which is not pruning the bottom third, that's going contrary to
Right.
what the ordinance
If you find
says.
anything bigger than a centimeter, then they've cut a bigger tree. Which they probably shouldn't do.
Just for clarification, how does, because this happens a lot, you know,
I know.
in real estate, I see it every day to go.
It's all over the place. I mean,
You know, someone has you know, small hemlocks cut 4 feet high. Now they wanna look it over, they take it down to 3 feet. Is that a violation?
To me it is,
Yeah.
to Charlie it's not.
Yeah, I would not have interpreted it as a violation. I've got exactly that, because I've never really trimmed my shoreline much. But I'm thinking of opening up a couple views here and there, and I'm thinking of cutting some down to 3 feet and trimming the bottom third of the more established trees.
Is there a section of the shoreline zone that clearly states how this is supposed to work?
I thought there was a diameter of the tree involved.
Yeah, it was like 4 inches at
4
chest
inches
height.
or 3 inches.
Yeah, I mean, that's DBH or whatever, was
Yeah.
that?
Right, yes, anything bigger than that, you can't go
You
and cut
can't,
to
you
3
can't
feet.
cut it, which.
Anything
makes perfect
smaller
sense.
than that, which is any new growth, you could continue to trim at 3 feet.
Yeah, because, you know, everybody has volunteer white pines and.
Right.
And hemlocks, everywhere, so.
So would this be in the timber harvesting section or no, clearing and removal of vegetation?
Yeah.
So that's page 35.
Sorry to go down this rabbit hole.
No, this is.
No, I mean, this is, because I've been confused on this, but Jana, you know, she's the Lake Smart person, she was saying you could cut it, the.
But I think you're right, anything that's got a certain diameter stem needs to be treated as a tree. And
Or
therefore,
three
and
or four.
therefore you can only trim the bottom third. Right, so the bottom third, yeah. So if your tree's only 8 feet high, then you're not trimming much, you're only trimming, you know,
Yeah.
2-3 feet.
I see 2 inches in diameter at 4.5 feet above ground level.
So 2 inches, that's the standard,
Well,
That
it's,
is
in-
protected.
it's, you know,
That point system thing.
this is in,
that could be defined, I mean, Hans has talked about making, and we've talked about having easier definitions of these things.
Oh, even Lynn said that this is ridiculous, that
Yeah,
you
it is.
need a degree in.
What, the 40%?
And the point system.
Right.
the point system.
And then-
is-
Well, I figured
The point system doesn't, I've tried applying the point system myself and it's just impossible.
You do 40% this 10 years, and then you do the other 40% year 11, and that's 80%.
Do we need to, look at the ordinance for this situation and try to make it more easily understood? I mean,
But I think so.
I think it's widely ambiguous.
Yes, and I think people don't like it regularly,
but, and this comes from the state though,
Yes.
so,
and it's not wrong, but you can't make it less protective than that. But
right.
you could make it, that could still be your.
But if we try to simplify it, that may not fly.
As long as it's more protective,
Right, I know.
you know, how do you prove that? Somebody could probably go to court to prove that you were, you know, less protective, but they wouldn't be motivated to go to court against you if.
I think it's gonna be impossible to enforce.
So should we all, look at this
Yeah.
section?
That's a good idea.
And study this section? It's one section to study.
Yeah, I think that a true understanding
Yeah,
Yeah,
and application of it is required before you can start to
Right.
improve it.
So it's section 0, or I'm sorry, O,
Oh,
on page 35. In the copy that I have.
yeah, see, it's in 45 on my copy, so I don't, but it's,
section O.
it is,
Yeah, section
it's K, M is agricultural, N is timber harvesting, and yeah, O, clearing and removal of vegetation for activities other than timber harvesting, so. I think that's it, so we look at. That's homework for the next
Yeah.
meeting. Yeah, I've been confused about it. and, I mean, I knew the bottom third, that's pretty, I sit in my hot tub and I, okay, how many thirds is that, right, that branch right there? So, yeah.
Otherwise, if 2 or 3 years, if you had like that, you at 4 feet, it's gonna be 7 feet.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just,
And trees will just,
What you don't wanna do is say you can do it between 3 and 10,
Yeah.
because if the tree's 11 feet, you're probably gonna kill it.
you want it,
You know, so
it's
they keep the bottom third so they don't kill the short trees, and
yeah, but.
I'm assuming that's the logic.
Well, the spirit of the whole thing is to have a vegetative buffer, right? I mean, that's the spirit.
And allow for a view at the same
And
time.
allow for a
So
reasonable.
you've got a
reasonable-
window in there
Right.
between 3 and 10 feet,
Yeah,
you know, which is okay
yeah.
in general, except if the tree's 12 feet high.
And then it's diameter, anyway, okay, so what else?
That's the last one before 12. That was 11, right?
Yeah, that was 11, so that's, so we've gone through her comments. You have, marching orders. We were looking at prioritizing stuff,
You know, the third, you know, to your point about the third. And how, you know, you're seeing your head's out trying to figure it out, it would almost be easier just to say 10, 15 feet, whatever your number is. Just say any tree less than 20 feet, you can only trim up to 8 feet.
I think the third is okay. I mean, it's,
I think it's, at least you can measure it,
yeah.
but it's
yeah.
still, you know, it gets towards that 40% language, and that's always been problematic, I think.
Well, and also once the trees get a certain height, you're not gonna be able to trim the bottom third.
I mean, you could, but you're gonna hire a tree
Well,
company
you got,
or
yeah,
something.
you gotta need
Yeah.
a tree, but
Yeah.
And you wouldn't want that
Yeah,
anyway.
you never
from
need
a-
to, you don't need to.
who cares? Yeah.
Right,
that point
but
is-
you know, technically you could if you know, and somebody's gonna take advantage of that.
Oh, they do. I can give you an address.
But, you know, for short trees, 5 feet, for bigger trees, 10 feet.
Well, there's people
That would
buying
make it simple.
houses on a hill and the second,
Yeah,
stories in the bedroom, they wanna see out, so they're like. You know, they got one that they saved everything but the top third, yeah, I mean, cut everything but the top.
Right,
It's like a little castle up there.
okay.
I think I know those.
What else do we wanna discuss? So Hans, I think before you came in, we were saying that we wanted to go back to Sarah Langette and ask for change number 12, which was, the notification of, abutting landowners. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Ask her,
What's that?
I mean, go ahead and ask her.
Yeah, I mean,
Do you think that's a good idea?
I think you're gonna give them Butters the false impression that. You know, the planning board makes a decision based on the ordinance. Period. There's somebody out here sobbing and crying that they don't wanna see a tree cut, but it's allowed. You know, the sobbing and crying is not gonna have any effect. And
We were talking earlier before you came in about not letting it, like you can get a PBR today and do the work tomorrow. And if you get the PBR and then send out the notice, it's gonna be after the fact that the work's already done. Sometimes PBRs are, you know, they're good for 2 years.
Yeah.
So you might be actually doing it 6 months later, other times it's 6 minutes later. You get that thing and the contractor shows up, so.
again, the PBR does not. Circumvent municipal rule.
Right,
So that's why we want to put in ordinance that it's written, you must go to the local code officer.
with the PBR.
Yep.
So Stuart would need to do that on his way to doing the job.
Yes, and Stuart and I, we talked about that. It's not on the way to doing the job, it's when the PBR is issued.
Yep.
So, they've gotten really good about copying me, and
Good.
Stuart also copies me. When
Good.
A lot of applications as he submits them, so I see them.
Right, early,
Front end.
right.
Hans, you say, this is Lenny, you say they're gotten good about copying you. Would it be possible to have them inform the recipient of the PBR that it's necessary to also get, I won't say get a permit because maybe it's not necessary, but also to deal with the town as well to find out if a permit is necessary? That is, so I'm asking, is it possible to get the state to inform the recipient of that?
State's not gonna wanna do
I
it.
think so.
They don't want to do it, and I had a discussion with Colin Clark. He wants the applicants to come to us first and then apply for the PBR. To avoid this.
How does that happen?
well, it doesn't happen.
State law
I
that would have to
I
change.
needed to move a rock and I called up the town and they said, no, that's a PBR. So they basically said, we have nothing to do with that.
And that was a situation where the town doesn't have ordinance to interfere with
Right, moving a
that.
rock
And
in
if
the
the
water.
state allows it, then great, they do. But the town doesn't have an
And it wasn't
ordinance.
gonna violate any other ordinance, or?
No.
Yeah,
So. And I think that practice of people coming to the town first and then say, no, go to the state. Gives the applicant the false impression, oh, I get the state permit and that overrules the town. And that's kind of like, I like the PBR first and then we review. Because then, but once word gets around, everybody knows the PBR is the jumping off place. Not the finishing place.
Right.
Mhm.
And the problem with the state notifying the recipient of the PDR is that PDR is if you don't hear back from the state for,
Yeah.
what, 10 days or 14 days or whatever it
It's
is,
approved.
It's automatic.
So-
you get it. So,
sometimes with Seven Lakes, because they know us, we get them in 3 days,
okay,
you know, so.
so they actually tell you that you have it, rather than you never heard from them for,
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
because-
if they wanna get the job done, if the YCC is trying to crank out jobs, which they're always trying to crank out jobs.
right,
Then yes, they'll call up, you know, Cam Dufour and say, is this okay? And he'll say, yeah.
okay.
Cause they know us and they trust us and kind of like Hans trusts us, there's a working relationship.
I've told people to call Stuart and have him do it, because he'll get fast track and it'll be done in a week. I
Okay,
mean, that's,
I think what we're, with change number 12, what we're getting at is that if somebody gets a permit for a shed, and then they build a garage or they build something bigger, that the abutting landowners know, they have a copy of that permit and they know it's just for a shed. They start to see somebody building a, 2-story bunkhouse, then, they are in the loop and they can help you enforce the permit.
Really for community enforcement, community
Yeah, it's
assistance.
like a community watch or whatever.
Yeah, what of those things were, neighborhood watch or
Neighborhood
something.
watch. So that, I mean, that's the goal.
and notifying the butters is not as easy as it sounds.
No.
Because a lot of them are out of state. You know, you look at their tax records, they live in Pennsylvania, so you send a notice there, well, they're not there. You know, even if they are there, it might go to a post office box or an office or a trustee's office. Nobody ever sees it. And
Well, I'm not saying that it's perfect, but if
It's a start.
it's once again, not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. I think that's the concept of, because we've got plenty of people that are watching the lake and that care about the lake and, so, I don't know. I mean, it seems, we'll see if it'll fly.
Could you put something like there, everybody who's got a lake owners, when you go in and look at where they are and you map a lot, they've got a mailing address usually. Is that correct?
Well, that's what the tax.
So you could
the
just
tax-
say, you mail it to that, if it,
I think that's what we would hope
do.
that they would
and
do.
if for some reason they're vacation somewhere else or don't get it. Our role will be, the town's role will be just to notify.
Well, it's like sending the property tax bills. If you don't get it, you still owe a tax.
Still do.
Right,
It was sent to where, we're supposed to be.
seems like it.
Seems like a good start.
Anyway,
yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to the immediate abutters.
Yeah.
And, as a watchdog practice. And. Yeah, it's just postage and time. Do you have an intern?
No, well, it's up to the landowner to do, but it would be more work for, in Seven Lakes case, Stewart. Because the chances are the landowner's not gonna do it. Chances are, if we wanna get the job done, we're gonna have to look up the landowners and send out a notice, but.
Well, it would be.
It is what it is.
It would be either the town or a fallback position would be the applicant for the building permit.
I think it should be the applicant is
Would-
responsible.
Well, but we have to make sure it has, so part of the application might be the,
The certification from the post office that has gone out, that's what I've had to do.
or the addressed envelopes.
Yeah, right.
Something like.
For the permit. Here it is.
And then you have to trust that they got everybody, because the post office can certify they went out.
Yeah.
But they're not gonna certify that you've included everybody you should have.
Right. So there might be need a double check.
Oh,
on
hopefully
that.
there's only 2 or 3 abutters.
Right. At most,
But you might wanna also draft a letter, a form letter. To the effect that the message you wanna deliver.
yeah, just to make it simple.
All right. We'll, be asking if you
Because, you know,
anywhere for that.
you have an idea of what it should say, I have an idea, Sarah's gonna have an idea. And by the time it gets addressed in the meeting, there's an idea, it could be 6 degrees away. So providing a form letter might,
Might help.
Yeah, stand
Get
with
them
that.
to say yes. Yeah. Paul could draft the notice letter.
Now we got.
I see what that's,
What else we
that
got?
would be good, because
Yeah.
I did find a place where, a foundation was approved to be put under the main cottage, and now there's a foundation under the main cottage and under the bunkhouse, which also has a washer and a dryer and a stove and everything else,
Right.
so.
Things grow.
Work outside the scope of the permit is what it is.
Yeah.
So a neighbor that was aware may have noticed and
Might
said
have
something.
seen that happening, yeah. I mean, I can think of a couple of instances where neighbors have, called the attention to the CEO and it's been very helpful, so. I think we're all watching our neighbors. We're on the lake, what else are we gonna do? Right?
Especially in the winter.
Yeah, well, winter time, we're just watching the 1 or 2 lights across the lake.
Listen for the noise of the
All
chainsaw.
Well, that's it, yeah.
I just wondered, didn't we discuss this in whether or not the notice is gonna send the permit along, and then how does a neighbor know what was granted?
It's a copy of the permit.
Okay,
That's in the language on 12, let's see. All permits issued by the town for properties within the shoreline zone require town notification of abutting landowners. Notice will include a copy of the approved permit. So that's,
all covered, good.
yeah. Anything else? What's everybody doing for Thanksgiving?
Going to Virginia,
You're going, to Virginia? right?
yeah, Andrew's family,
Right.
so quick trip, out tomorrow, back Friday.
That's quick.
We are going to friends about 5 miles away down, down Route 11 a little ways.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Giving up to brisket.
We did it last year, there's nobody there, it was wonderful.
Oh, that's
Going
cool.
out for sushi, where do you
Yeah,
go?
where's your
Just
favorite place?
Waterville,
Which one?
the one next to Hannaford, whatever.
Oh, the,
Yeah,
yeah,
Is that good?
You have this thing called the sushi boat, it's like 3 or 4 different kinds and 2 rolls, it's way more than 2, it's for 2 people, but it's
it's
more
really
than
more like,
8.
yeah, 3 or 4.
Wow.
yeah.
But it's a good variety.
That's good. We like the one that's in Augusta, down from Home Depot, that one there.
We do that on Christmas. The family gathered, we had 14 people last year, it was great.
Good. What about you, Pat?
ready to stay home. Everybody else took off, all my brothers and sisters are. all
Going
going
out for
to
sushi.
They're going to Florida, so that's a long week.
Oh, wow. Where are they going, Florida?
They're going to Orlando.
Wow.
What about you, Charlie? You home or traveling?
I bake a pie and go to Smithfield. We do Christmas for the family and they do Thanksgiving, so
Yes.
Well, that's good. That's
we
good.
gotta trade back and forth. Yeah.
Paul,
With
you
the
going,
cousins
you
all
going
over.
fly fishing, Paul?
No, I'm going upstate New York and we are cooking a brisket.
Huh. Whereabouts in upstate New York?
It's a town called Highland Mills and it's near Beacon in Newburgh.
Or Newburgh.
Newburgh, okay.
Oh, so just north of New York City, yeah,
About an hour up the valley, yeah.
right. Cool,
Enjoy it.
be fun, yeah. That's good.
And then
All
I'm
right.
flying to Maryland to see my grandchildren on the weekend, so
Oh. Where are they in Maryland?
Silver Spring.
Oh, well, I grew up right, in the line between Silver Spring and Bethesda.
Oh,
Whereabouts in Silver Spring?
Dale Avenue,
Oh, Dale Drive.
Dale Drive, I guess, Dale Drive.
Yes, I know Dale Drive. Yeah, or I mean, I knew Dale Drive a long time ago, I should say. Yes. Right.
Is that near the Mormon temple?
No, not really. The Mormon Temple that is out on the Beltway. Actually, from Dale
Yeah,
Drive, if you go from Dale Drive, Dale Drive intersects Georgia Avenue. And if you go out Georgia Avenue about a mile, you can, it intersects the Beltway. And if you head towards Virginia, I don't know, 3 or 4 miles, there's the Mormon Temple.
Right
Just
on the left.
looming large.
It looks like I was a ski bum out in Utah, so I kind of saw the Mormon quite a bit and saw the big temple there, but anyway.
Well, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
you.
Oh,
All right,
okay.
thanks, everybody. See you in December.
All right, December 10th.
All right, yeah.
Okay. And Paul, there used to, I don't know if it's probably long gone by now. There used to be a great pizza place right near Dale Drive and George Avenue called the Pizza Oven on George Avenue, but right by Dale Drive. So if it's still there, they had great
We're
pizza.
very close to that area, but I'll check it out. I
Yeah.
think there's an Ethiopian restaurant there now.
Yeah. Well, like I'm talking like the 1960s. So it's been a long time.
The next
Okay.
piece.